Well, it's a very interesting story because today the CBI raided the CBI headquarters in Delhi. The country's premier investigating agency, the CBI, has filed an FIR against its own special director, Rakesh Asthana, for allegedly accepting bribes of over 3 crore rupees to scuttle an investigation. Now, this brought into the spotlight a fight that has been brewing inside the CBI for several years between its director, Alok Verma, who's in charge, and his second-in-command, Rakesh Asthana. The fight started 2 years ago when both of these men were vying for the same job. In 2016, after the then director of CBI, Anil Sinha, retired, Rakesh Asthana was appointed interim director, and 2 months later, the post was given to Alok Verma. Rakesh Asthana was then posted as special director of the CBI, and that's where it all began. October 2017, the CBI director Verma wrote a 2-page dissent note to the Chief Vigilance Commissioner alleging that Sterling Biotech, a company, had bribed his number 2, Asthana, at 3.88 crore rupees. So Alok Verma recommended that Asthana's promotion be stopped until investigations were completed. But the CVC then cleared Asthana's promotion. And things took a serious turn when Asthana in turn wrote to the cabinet secretary complaining that CBI director Alok Verma had been interfering in his cases and investigations and had also allegedly accepted a bribe of over 2 crore rupees from Hyderabad-based businessman Sana Babu. Incidentally, the current FIR against Asthana is for accepting a bribe of 3 crore rupees from the same Sana Babu. Rakesh Asthana further went on to list more than a dozen charges against his director, and the CBI in turn informed the CVC that it's investigating Asthana for 6 cases of corruption. Asthana is currently investigating the Augusta Westland chopper scam, Vijay Mallya's loan fraud, and Moin Qureshi's case. The question we have to all ask is this: when the dust has settled on these allegations that these two men are making against each other, has the CBI's credibility been completely eroded? How are we, as ordinary citizens, to trust the CBI anymore, or any investigation conducted by it? We also have to ask one more question. If indeed there is corruption in the highest offices of the CBI, who is to investigate it but the CBI themselves? That's the question we're asking today. Has the confidence in the CBI completely eroded? Is there no credibility left? Joining me on the show, Vaibhav Agarwal as a political analyst, Mohammad Khan for the Congress, Arima Sundaram, Sanjay Hegde, Prashant Bhushan, and who are all senior advocates, and Shantanu Sen, former Joint Director of the CBI. Gentlemen, I welcome you to this conversation and I thank you for your time. Mr. Sundaram, I'm going to start with you. Has the CBI lost all credibility in this fight between number 1 and number 2?
Well, I think it's a natural progression of things. I say that because, the CBI was always regarded as the one agency which one could look to have a fair and impartial probe and really get to the bottom of things. In many ways, it was thought to be the equivalent of what the Americans consider the FBI to be. For example, that the FBI will honestly investigate everything. That was the view. But over the past several years, and it's not now, over the past several years, there have been various allegations against the CBI officers and especially at the highest levels. Now, if the rot starts at the top, then I suppose it would permeate all the way down. And this is not, it happened with Rakesh Sinha, it happened before that, AP Singh. I mean, it's been going on. But this is the very first time we have had a case of the allegations against the CBI not coming from outside. Till now, it has been a question of allegations being made against the CBI, against an investigation, again saying that people have been visiting the director of CBI when they should not, etc. But now we've actually come to a stage where we have 2 officers of the CBI accusing each other of corruption, and that's 1 and 2. Now, if it comes to that, where you actually have, now whether we like to accept it or not, Asthana believes that the director is corrupt, the director believes that Asthana is corrupt. Now each of them is making charges against each other. Now how are we to understand this? Are we not to understand that at the very least, the number 2 of CBI doubts the credibility of and the honesty of number 1.
Yes.
The number 1 of CBI doubts the honesty of number 2. And we as Indians, how are we to view the honesty? How are we to view the honesty when the CBI itself doubts its own honesty? And that's what we've come to. The CBI is today doubting its own honesty.
Mr. Shantanu Sen, former Joint Director of the CBI. Mr. Sen, who's responsible for the CBI? Who do we look to at a time like this?
CBI was created by the government as an anti-corruption agency in 1942 when it was known as the Special Police Establishment. And thereafter in 1963 the government under Lal Bahadur Shastri as Home Minister by notification declared CBI as the anti-corruption agency of the government of India. And till the 80s CBI was doing excellent work. 80s the first time the CBI stumbled, and that was when the cases registered for investigation under the Shah Commission directions were one after another manipulated and closed. So CBI has been misused, and thereafter again CBI had good directors. CBI needs good directors, good, honest police officers. There are plenty of them. And they were posted and CBI recovered. CBI became a good organization. CBI created a good wave in the country, and that continued. But then they again stumbled by appointing a director who was a government nominee, and he listened more to the Prime Minister than the law. He listened more to senior government functionaries. And thereafter CBI has been going down. CBI was created with good intentions. CBI had a team of good officers. CBI's recruitment policy of creating master detectives through the UPSC stumbled. That was stopped in 2010. So all this has worked in a way to bring the CBI down. And I agree with Mr. Sundaram wholeheartedly that today CBI cannot be respected. Well, there was once upon a time I have heard High Court judges say, we respect the CBI finding as much as we respect the Supreme Court finding. That was the CBI of my time. And it's sad that CBI has gone down to such a length, and we have to wait, watch and see. It's like the family patriarch watching the next generation going down. I'm very sorry.
Mr. Prashant.
But your question, who is responsible for this?
Who's responsible?
The government. The government of India. The government of India is responsible for this.
How
Absolutely.
so?
They have chosen wrong persons and placed them there. What was wrong with R.K. Datta? He was a man of the CBI. He had spent his time as SP, DIG, Joint Director and Special Director. He was just removed 3 days before Mr. Sinha retired. He should have moved in, ideal person. They bring in an outsider who doesn't know the CBI, who has to listen to people because he doesn't know the CBI. He has to rely upon others. You need not greenhorns in the CBI. You need experienced CBI officers. You need detectives who are trained to work as detectives in the CBI. First, you stop recruiting these officers. From 2001, not a single direct recruit to man the higher positions as detectives in the CBI have been recruited by the UPSC. Finished. And then you bring people from ITBP, CRPF, BSF and make them investigating officers. You're bound to fail. And then you appoint people who are greenhorns as directors CBI, people whose integrity is doubtful. What do you expect?
Yes, a quick
CBI
comment.
has a large team of good investigating officers.
Yes, I will come back to you, Mr. Sen. But
director, please.
Yes.
And at the present moment, immediately.
Yes, Mr. Prashant Bhushan, do you agree right now that it would be difficult?
Please get rid of these two straight away.
Yes, it would be difficult to respect CBI findings anymore.
That has been the case for quite some time. Unfortunately, the government for many years has been using the CBI as its instrument, as its political instrument to harass political opponents, to protect their own people, etc. So this, Mr. Shantanu Sen is right, that there has been a gradual deterioration of the CBI. But so far as the present crisis is concerned, the government is singularly responsible by trying to bring in and push through Mr. Rakesh Asthana first as acting director when he was not even eligible to be appointed director. It was only when we filed a petition in the Supreme Court that he was removed and a regular director, Mr. Alok Verma, was appointed through the collegium process, through a selection process involving the Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition and the Chief Justice. Thereafter, they appointed Mr. Rakesh Asthana as the special director, despite the fact that the CBI director pointed out that name was pushed through at the behest of the PMO. On Saturday, this name was sent. Saturday itself, CVC called this meeting, and on Sunday, this notification was issued. The CBI director brought a note pointing out that we are ourselves investigating the role of Mr. Rakesh Asthana in the Sterling Biotech case, a 5,000 crore money laundering case where the owners of this company, Sandesaras, have already fled the country. And his name appears in a diary which was recovered from the Sandesaras, which say that he was paid about 4 crore rupees on 4 different dates. Thereafter, his daughter-in-law's wedding was held at the Sandesaras farmhouse. His son worked with the Sandesaras, and in these circumstances, the CBI director said that it would be totally improper to appoint him as a special director. In fact, he should not remain in the CBI. But despite that, the government insisted on pushing him through as the special director, appointed him as the special director, and now the CBI has had to register as many as 6 or 7 cases against him, and today they have arrested an officer, a subordinate of Rakesh Asthana has been arrested by the CBI today for having fabricated a 161 statement of the person who filed this complaint against Mr. Asthana, supposedly implicating the director, which is one of the bases on which the Mr. Rakesh Asthana made a complaint against the present director to the CVC. So that complaint is based on a fabricated 161 statement, which is alleged to be recorded by Mr. Rakesh Asthana's subordinate in Delhi on a date when the person whose statement is recorded was in Hyderabad. So therefore, all this has been going on, and the government and the Prime Minister's office is singularly responsible for having created this mess by appointing a person with totally dubious credentials as a special director. And I would compliment the director of the CBI, the present director of the CBI, for having gone after him. Because it is the duty of the CBI and the CBI director to go after corrupt officers, irrespective of the fact that they have the protection of the Prime Minister's office. Okay. It is to the credit of the present director that he has gone after his own deputy.
All right, Vaibhav Agarwal, do you disagree with what Mr. Bhushan and Mr. Sen have said so far, that it's at the end of the day the government's and the Prime Minister's responsibility who heads the CBI and what happens to the credibility of the organization?
The problem is that both the seniors, what they're saying is they have their own perspectives. But if we don't look at the rhetoric for a moment or actually, if we look at the rhetoric and then bring forth since 1963, bring forth the tradition that has been there in the system, I think both have credible points, and Mr. Bhushan is also singularly responsible for pointing out R.K. Sinha, the then CBI director, and the expose on him, and so on and so forth. But having said that, my take on this is very simple. When CBI was a caged parrot, we had a problem. CBI today is a free bird, independently functioning. We have a problem and we want to criticize it. Well, criticism is excellent in the public discourse. But when the public discourse criticism becomes a diktat for the department, and then you start not just opinionating on it, but then you start telling what is right and wrong and not allowing the system to take its own course, I think that's very sad.
Okay,
because
so Vaibhav Agarwal, if I may,
we have the right to debate. I don't think at the end of the day the jurisdiction of the action remains with the agency.
If I may, Vaibhav Agarwal, my first problem is we're not criticizing the CBI. The CBI is criticizing itself. Here you have the number one and the number two accusing each other of serious cases of bribery, not one and two, but half a dozen cases. You have one CBI official who has been arrested by the CBI today. The CBI has raided its own office. The CBI has filed an FIR against the number two in command of the CBI. Explain to me, and I'm an ordinary citizen, explain to me, how am I to ever trust the CBI again? And how, under the watch of this government, have we come to a point where we are having this discussion at all?
So one part is for sure that there is no politics involved in the system, and that is why the CBI is raiding its own office. If there was a question of protecting its own officers, then you know, and there was government interference or protectionism or something like that, then you know what, the press release that we all saw from CBI wouldn't have come forth. They wouldn't have raided their own office. They wouldn't have arrested their own DSP rank officer. He's not just a constable or an inspector or something. You understand what I'm saying? And he's the direct subordinate in question of the current joint director that we are all busy accusing. So you understand where the narrative is going. So the other side,
hang on. So you're saying, hang on.
If there was government interference, then we wouldn't have come to this stage.
Okay. Let me allow for rebuttals. And I want to give Mr. Shantanu Sen an opportunity before I bring in Sanjay Hegde. Mr. Sen, do you want to rebut what Vaibhav Agarwal has said? I want to make it clear, we're not talking about politics, we're talking about inefficiency. But Mr. Sen, do you want an opportunity to rebut Vaibhav Agarwal?
Mr. Vaibhav Agarwal is saying that the organization has acted independently of the government. I agree. There is no, as Mr. Prashant Bhushan also said, director has acted independently of the government. There is no doubt about that. After all, to register an FIR against his number two, he has taken a decision. No government, no Prime Minister, no CVC will tell him to go ahead. So embarrassing for them. So CBI has that independence. But the point at issue is, why was this situation created? As Mr. Prashant Bhushan has said, there was enough material to question Mr. Asthana's continuation in the CBI after Alok Verma took over as director. When the two were not going to pull on, one had to go. He could have been brought in later on. But the government's mistake is there. Government has allowed Rakesh Asthana to continue after appointing Alok Verma as director. Director should have been given a free hand to keep his officers. That's how the CBI functions. The CBI director is more powerful than Director BSF and Director CRPF because he posts his officers. Director CRPF, BSF, the others have to seek Government of India's permission to post senior officers. Director has all the powers to post officers. He's a very powerful person. And here he was asked to continue with Rakesh Asthana. He could not send him back. Who's responsible for that? The government must have stopped him. Alok Verma must have wanted him out. After all, I can understand. If he registers 6 cases against his...
No, can I...
No, one second. Let me also bring in Sanjay. One second. Let me also bring in Sanjay Hegde. Sanjay Hegde, Asthana has alleged that no formal sanction has been got to go after him. Is there a formal sanction that's required to file an FIR against him?
See,
not in a case
there are
of
formal
bribery.
sanctions which kick into place before any court takes cognizance. That's a different matter altogether. There are informal directives and guidelines which say that when you're raiding a senior officer, you take permission of the higher-ups. In fact, when it comes to the judiciary, before you raid a judge, you do take permission from the Chief Justice. These are things which are built into the practice. But mere lack of permission does not invalidate the actions. Permission can always be granted later. Now, having said that, I just want to develop further on the point that Mr. Shantanu was making, and it is this, that in any healthy organization where the head comes through open selection, what happens is that the person who misses out on the selection normally is forced to move out of the organization and to get another job elsewhere. It happens in the corporate world. It happens in government.
Yes.
I've been privy to conversations where the question was who was to be chief secretary of a state, and one of the candidates told the person concerned, look, there are 2 of us. If I get chosen, I will stay in the state capital and he will move to Delhi, or it will be vice versa. This is how governments and competent organizations are run. That once you choose a man with a specific tenure,
Yes.
you give him a free hand with no number two, with a sense of grievance lurking in the background. Add to that mix, you have this number two who has been very controversial and who has only gone up to number two, but because the top man in the country has been pushing his case. At some point, something had to give. If there had to be and the CBI director today must be commended for being independent enough to say that if there is a crime committed, no matter who's backing him, let us have an investigation.
All right.
This is a failure of management and also of perception by the government of the day. Whatever is going to happen, they are fully responsible for this can of worms.
I understand that Mr. Shantanu Sen has to leave the conversation, but Mr. Sen, before you go, you said that there's no need for formal go-ahead or sanction in the case of bribery. But here's my question to you. One discussion could be about how these two men of the same seniority wound up in an organization and couldn't get along. But that's not my concern. My concern is of the very serious allegations of bribery. Half a dozen allegations of corruption they've made against each other. Are we to understand from this that the highest officers of the CBI are corrupt?
No, that is not correct. These two officers have been charged with corruption. There are other officers. What is the charge against them? You can't go just because one is corrupt, the other one man should also be corrupt. I'm sorry, such a conclusion is unwarranted. Here is a case where the CBI director has chosen to file a complaint with full responsibility. He is liable to action under the Criminal Procedure Code if his complaint is false. So therefore, he has done it. He has acted independently. And to say that because Mr. Asthana is charged with corruption, because Mr. Alok Verma is charged with corruption, the rest of the CBI is corrupt, where do you get this sort of thing? The other officers have to be found corrupt before you charge them with corruption. CBI has 4,000 inspectors, half a dozen DIGs or more, and about 12 or more directors, joint directors.
Right.
These officers are working their heart out. You can't charge them with corruption.
Faye,
Yes, Mr. Sundaram, go ahead, please.
Faye, can I ask? Yeah, I think this optimistic statement is wonderful. I would like to believe it. I would like to believe what we just heard. I'm sure all of us as Indians want to believe it.
Yes.
But the fact is, it's not today's incident. Today's incident has brought out, like I said, it's a CBI accusing itself. It's number one accusing number two accusing number one. But this is not the first. Don't forget that prior to this incident, the higher ups, the earlier directors of CBI, two in fact in the recent past, have also come under a cloud. Now it's not as though saying that yes, there are honest officers. Of course there are honest officers. And I would like to believe that the majority are honest. I'd like to believe the majority of people are honest. But what is worrying is, why is it people right on top in the recent past have been under a cloud?
Yes.
That is the worrying factor. We always say yata raja tata praja.
Yes.
The fact is, you have the person right on top. This is not the first incident. This is not the first at all. We've had something against Mr. AP Singh. We've had something against Mr. Ranjit Sinha. I don't know. This is not something which has just happened today. So it's all very well to be optimistic and say there are honest officers. Of course there are honest officers. I'm not bothered that there are 900 honest officers because I expect all 100 of them to be honest. It's not an answer to say 90% of officers are honest. You can't say 90% are honest, but the top brass is not. It's when the top brass is not that we as citizens get very, very worried. And that is what we are facing today. And we can't escape that.
Absolutely. Mohammad Khan of the Congress, let's accept that this is not an overnight phenomena. The CBI being called a caged parrot happened when the Supreme Court pointed out that the CBI was a caged parrot under the UPA government. successive governments have crippled the CBI and turned it into
Okay.
what it is today, isn't it?
Well-
Isn't that true?
Well, fair enough. Let us assume without admitting that to be true. But does it change the facts as they stand today, or does it exonerate this government of this crisis? A crisis that has no parallel in history. As the very distinguished panelists before me pointed out, this is the very first time that the senior most official is filing an FIR against the second senior most official. It has never happened before. The state of disarray has never existed before. This points to an indication that the institution itself has been eroded from within. If you allow me, Faye, I want to make a point that Dr. Singhvi made earlier today, and because it was so masterful and I can't improve upon it, I'll repeat it verbatim. Dr. Singhvi said, in the context of this going to the door of the Prime Minister and why he is complicit in this crisis, that there is a crime of omission and there is a crime of commission. The crime of commission on the Prime Minister's part is that he forced this man through, a point made by Prashant sir as well. When there were other credible officers, when the procedure did not justify his appointment, he still insisted on this man's appointment, despite objections from the current number one. He said at that point of time that this man is under investigation, but he was steamrolled. Now we come to the crime of omission. For the last 9 months, these facts have been coming to light. These were facts that were brought to the Prime Minister's attention repeatedly. This is a Prime Minister who transfers officers at the slightest pretext. And in this case, why did he not take action? Because remember, the Department of Personnel and Training is accountable directly to the Prime Minister himself. Dr. Singhvi rightly said, and we stand behind his statement, that the objective was to control the institution. Because he couldn't control number one, because as Prashant sir pointed out, number one is appointed through a transparent process involving the Chief Justice of India and the Leader of Opposition. He had to have this man there. And it served his purposes to create a certain amount of friction within the agency itself. So this is a charge that we level at our Prime Minister, and this is why
Mohammed
this
Khan,
is such an important
here's
issue.
my
Finally, I'll say
rebuttal.
this
One
because
second,
no one
if
else
I
has
may.
touched upon it.
Yes.
Can I just say one point that
All right.
nobody... Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, the point I'm making is the gentleman who was arrested 4 hours ago, the number 2 to Mr. Rakesh Asthana, do you know the charge against him? He was getting one of the
Yes.
accused to forge a statement against the director. Why would he do that? Unless there was a motivated
DSP
agenda, why would he
arrested
do
is
that?
not
Unless he
number 2
benefited
to
Mr.
Rakesh
Asthana, why
Asthana,
would he do
Mohammed
that?
Bhai.
None of
You
this
got to
looks
get
very
your
good for
facts
Mr.
right
Asthana
of
at
the
all.
structure of the CBI.
All right, gentlemen, one at a time, please.
Weber
First
bhai,
of all,
Weber bhai, we know our facts. You've already been rebuked on another channel today for your paucity of knowledge on the subject, so please don't educate me on this. I want to say this, and Prashant sir is here, Sanjay ji is here. They will correct me if I'm wrong, because they're far more acutely familiar with the details of this case than you or I.
right.
Finally, this, when Prashant sir brought all of
I
these
think-
things
I
to the
think I
attention
need
of
to
the
come on
Supreme
this
Court,
way.
the Modi government said, fine.
I
there's
think this is a
nothing- there's
political
no merit
attack.
there.
I think I should
But
take this
today,
on.
in
Okay,
light of
okay, one
everything
at a
that has
time.
happened, in
I
light of
can't
the
understand
FIR
you
filed-
speak
some
one
yarn
after
in light
each
of
other.
the FIR filed
One
by the
second, one
CBI,
second.
those
Weber,
accusations
Weber
require
and
renewed
Mohammed
relevance.
Khan, one second. Mohammed Khan, my only rebuttal to you is the CVC cleared Asthana and his promotion when it was brought to them to begin with. Now, are you telling us that the CVC is also at this point being
correct.
manipulated?
You are absolutely correct. No, my argument is this. Those accusations at that point
I
of time
hold myself,
acquire a renewed
Faye,
relevance in light of the fact that this
Faye.
FIR has been filed. And I will say this. Look, Weber, listen to this. This is important. Forget everything that the Congress is saying if it suits you. But remember the statement given by the spokesperson for the CBI. Do you know what he says about the charges leveled? They say that those are a counterblast to deflect the charge of receipt of bribe money by the CBI Special Director Rakesh Asthana. This is the spokesperson of the CBI. The FIR recounts in detail the charges against you. It refers to the Sterling Biotech case.
That's
It
wrongly
refers
quoting.
to the Sana Satish case. It refers to various
That's
other cases
wrongly
where they
quoting.
claim to have
Okay,
traced
okay,
the money.
okay.
So you
Okay.
can't know what is this false reporting. Every newspaper in the country has reported this today on the front page. Weber, please educate yourself on the facts before you come to defend your party, even as a proxy.
All right,
So I will
gentlemen.
simply say
Claiming
this.
it and
The
naming
case is not
someone
ours to make, as
from
Faye
the
pointed out.
CBI.
We are not the ones making the case.
Okay,
The
okay,
CBI
okay,
has
okay.
made
Let's
the
calm
case.
down.
It
Let's
is not
calm down.
us.
All right. Let's calm down. Mr. Sundaram, here's the question. Is this now a political fight?
Aye.
And I don't understand why, if all of this is happening, both of these men are still in office. If Rakesh Asthana is being investigated, should he then remain in office?
Well, your first
Should I
question
take this
was, is this a political fight? My answer to that is, there's very little in India which is not a political fight. Now, this is an opportunity because of the present government in power. Obviously, the opposition will do everything in their power to attack, the present government in any which way they can through the officers concerned. If I can say the same thing, if it was the Congress in power, I'm sure that the other party would have done the very same thing. So it will be made a political fight. But let's come down to brass tacks, which is this. Today, there is one officer certainly under a cloud, inasmuch as an FIR has been filed. But at the same time, there are charges being made against the director himself. Now, in normal times, and this is what is worrying me. I'll tell you what has been worrying me from the beginning, Faye. It's a question of perception. Now, I as a citizen, in normal times, if I knew there was an FIR against the number 2, and the number 2 made allegations against number 1, in normal times I would have dismissed it and said, look, maybe it's just a way of getting back at him. But with the recent past of recent directors who have been under the cloud, I now know it's not impossible at all. It's very possible that directors of CBI will be under the cloud. And coupled with that is the fact that these charges have been made by the number 2 for a very long time. Either it's a case of a very disgruntled man for a very long time, but at the same time I ask myself, if he has been put there to keep a watch, why has he been making these charges and bringing them to a head? So at the end of it all, unfortunately as a citizen, instead of disbelieving corruption, I'm inclined to believe corruption. And that is the sad path this whole case is taking. That's a very sad path it's taking, that we are losing faith in our premier agency. And that is very unfortunate, especially when the courts, every time there's any dispute on anything, there's a question, we want a fair investigation. A prayer always is, and the courts say, yes, ask the CBI to investigate. That is the faith the citizen and the courts have in it. Unfortunately, I think that is a faith which is fast disappearing, not only from the present fight, but from the recent incidents involving CBI directors. I think people are willing to believe that there is corruption in the CBI, whereas before they would have not been willing to believe it. Now I think people are more than ready to believe it.
Yes,
And
Sanjay Hegde had a point to make. Sanjay Hegde, please go ahead.
See, the point is that the Supreme Court once called it a caged parrot. Then people during this government said that it was a selective Rottweiler. I was just wondering what animal analogy now suited the situation. It almost looks like a pack of hyenas waiting to devour itself. Somebody better put that organization back at least to the level that we have, that it commands some credibility, so that the courts, as Mr. Sundaram said, can resort back to it, be confident in the knowledge that the investigation will be done without fear or favor. One last animal analogy is that the fish rots from the head. Unfortunately, as far as the CBI is concerned, it has often been that the head of the CBI is not the director, but the central government. The real problem lies there.
We have a couple of people on the phone line, and I'm interested to know what the average citizen thinks about this entire problem. Ajay Verma from Gurgaon. Ajay, go ahead, please. Ajay? All right, Rakesh Jain from Hyderabad.
Yeah, ma'am, my question is very simple. I'm a common citizen.
Yes, go ahead.
Now, what we have seen is that earlier the CBI was told as a caged parrot. Now, do we start believing that it is not caged parrot, but it's a dead parrot? Second thing.
Yes.
What is the role of Prime Minister's office intervention in this? There has to be proper investigation by the head of the authority or whomsoever, and let the truth shall come out. What is happening in the CBI? If the CBI is indulged in all these things, supposed to be indulged in all these things, or at least to be indulged in all these things, what will be the perception of the Indian people in terms of the premier investigating agency? Third point.
Yes.
What is the role of CVC? Because CVC role is also under cloud.
Yes.
About the appointment of one of the directors of
Rakesh
CBI.
Asthana, yes.
And the fourth one is, it's a fit case for the Lokpal. Now, the entire country was for Lokpal. Now, 4.5 years or more or less has been over. Where is this Lokpal?
Where's the Lokpal? All right, all very fair questions. Let me divide the questions among my panel. Mr. Sundaram, first question to you. What is the role of the PMO and the intervention that ought to be taken or could be taken? Is there any responsibility for the CBI that lies at the Prime Minister's office, Mr. Sundaram?
You know, this is really a catch-22 situation. On the one hand, if we are to treat the CBI as answering to the PMO all the time or answering to the government, exactly what Sanjay Hegde has just been complaining about, then we say it's a caged parrot. On the other hand, if we say that it's a PMO which should now take action and direct the CBI how to act, we are then subscribing to the theory, yes, you should be a caged parrot. I think the only answer, and I think the one question that your telephonic subscriber did talk about, which is very right, this is why we need a Lokpal. This is exactly why we need a Lokpal. The reason is that in a case like this, it's only the CBI to investigate itself.
Yes.
We cannot have the PMO directing the CBI to do something because then they're acting under directions of the CBI. So it is only the CBI itself, which is exactly what is happening now. But the problem is that in perception, we all doubt the veracity of what everybody is saying. Rather than believe one or the other, we're doubting everybody.
I'll give you a piece of information,
Perhaps the answer really
Mr. Sundaram.
is what your viewer just said. The Lokpal should come in as quick as possible.
I'll give you a piece of information that is coming from one of our senior journalists who said the Prime Minister's office has summoned both of them right now, Verma and Asthana, to the Prime Minister's office as we speak. Yeah. What is your reaction to that, Mr. Sundaram?
Well, my reaction to it is the Prime Minister as the head of the country, the executive head of the country, as the Prime Minister ought to call them and talk to them. Nobody says that he can't do that. In fact, you can't say the Prime Minister should be completely uninvolved. But that is not to say that they should work on the directions of the Prime Minister. See, this is the whole point. Of course, the Prime Minister, being the Prime Minister, can call on anybody and ask them to say, look, what is the situation? What is happening? What should be done? That is completely different than saying someone is acting at the directions of the Prime Minister. He is looking into an administrative issue. He is looking into what is becoming a very scandalous issue. He wants to come to the bottom of this, and I think that's the correct thing.
Okay.
That is far from saying that he is giving them directions on how to act, how to carry out their investigations. That's a totally different matter where he would not interfere or should not interfere.
All right, Vaibhav Agarwal, the question to you would be, where is the Lokpal? It has been 4 years, 4.5 actually. Where is the Lokpal?
Well, I'm sure the government is in the consideration, but I don't speak on behalf of the government, so I wouldn't know about it. So you will have to have another debate to do the Lokpal analogy completely and where is it stuck right now. But if we bring this back into the CBI part of it, first of all, I want to ask the eminent panel and you also. The entire analogy between Rakesh Asthana and Alok Verma, I've perused the entire information available in the public domain. I don't suppose that any of the panelists, or except the media, because you have sources which are unnamed, would be privy to the non-gossip part of it, that Rakesh is abusing Alok and Alok is abusing Rakesh. So one is, for me, it's mere gossip unless I see a paper. Secondly, we also understand that back in 2016, when Rakesh Asthana's appointment was challenged,
I'm going to stop you. Vaibhav Agarwal.
There's an FIR
I'll show you
in this
papers.
case.
One second. This is the statement. There is the statement of the CBI. Here is the letter that was written by Rakesh Asthana to the CVC. Here is the letter that was written by Rakesh Asthana to the Cabinet Secretary. Here is
I'm sorry, but that is not in the public domain. Exactly,
Here is the FIR that was filed against Rakesh Asthana. So which paper do you want? What can I send you?
One second. I said, I as a private citizen, I'm not supposed to be the privy to the paperwork that you hold in your hand. You have the right to do that, and I have not been able to peruse that paperwork because I don't have access to it.
The FIR is uploaded on the CBI website.
You can, sorry?
The FIR is uploaded on the CBI website, and this is the
FIR. Exactly. Draw a line there. Exactly. 1 minute. You have to see the analogy. Exactly. The FIR that you are talking about is by a private citizen involved in a case which is an old case and naming quite a few people there. The FIR has been lodged. So if the government was involved in a protectionism, there is no protectionism there. So the FIR is involved. That clearly is fired up. So that clearly shows that this is a free and independent probe that is happening. Point number one. Point number two, why this is coming to the fore right now? All I'm saying is I'm talking about Alok Verma abusing Rakesh Asthana.
No, but we're not talking about abusing. No, 1 second. Vaibhav Agarwal, I just want to give one.
Saying that they are in
No, I'm running out of time. One second. Vaibhav Agarwal. Okay, 1 second. No. You're not listening to me. Nobody's talking about abusing. I don't care. We're talking about papers that have been filed in very senior offices. This is not about abusing. It's not about gossip. Please don't.
Any papers that have gone exchanged between. I'm sorry, any papers. Exactly. For me, it is because as private citizen.
Okay, so we'll have, like you said, a different conversation about gossip in government. No, 1 second.
All right. Call me stupid.
No, 1 second.
I have no problem in that.
No, but Vaibhav, what are you saying exactly? I don't understand the point you're making.
I'm not privy about it. So.
What is the point you're making? Please come to the point fast.
I'm coming to that. If you allow me to speak, if you allow me to complete the narrative. So you understand. So understand that CBI all this while has been used and abused to investigate only the scams which names complete Congress in totality, ranging from Rajiv Gandhi to anyone else, be it Hawala, be it Gopar, be it
come to the point,
gas
please.
tragedy, be it Priyadarshini Mattu, be it 2G Spectrum, India Coal Block or anything. And currently, it is the fodder scam and the Augusta Westland scam. Rakesh Asthana successfully got the extradition signed from Saudi Arabia for Christian Mitchell.
Yes.
You know, we need to be very privy to this.
So what are you saying?
Information to the audience need to be given correctly.
No, but first of all, okay, all right. So what are you saying? Are you saying this is a witch hunt against Asthana because he's investigating the Augusta Wetlands scam?
Upheld by the Supreme Court. C.A. Sundaram, Aryama is sitting here. The Supreme Court has upheld the appointment of Rakesh Asthana as the then director. Once the director
all right. Mohammad Khan, respond please very quickly.
Appointed as either the special director or the joint director or any other director. Doesn't matter.
Vaibhav, if you're done. Vaibhav, if you're done. I've listened patiently to you. Now let me respond to you. Vaibhav, Vaibhav,
go on,
come on, let someone else speak. Now, first of all, Vaibhav's argument that he is being targeted as part of a larger witch hunt is self-defeating. Because you're suggesting that this is the only officer in the entire CBI who is capable of investigating those cases. The facts don't change. Any officer is capable of investigating them unless you feel this officer is the only one qualified to give you a finding of your liking. That's a very damning concession to make. Number two, I want to talk about the Prime Minister calling these officials at this hour. That is wrong. It is wrong because now that FIRs have been filed and the CBI has issued a statement, the Prime Minister to call them and mediate in a criminal matter, that is absolutely not done. What does he hope to achieve by doing this? He should have called them 9 months ago when these issues were coming to the fore, transferred Mr. Asthana and said, look, once the investigation clears you, you come back. He didn't do that. To do that now implies that he is again complicit in this entire affair, and that is our position on the matter.
Sanjay Hegde?
He has to protect his number two.
Sanjay Hegde, do you agree?
See, I do agree to some extent in as much as the prime ministerial intervention or even the home minister could have intervened and said, please knock off the fight. The agency is suffering. The public image of the agency is also suffering. There is, of course, no question of the political authority interfering in the investigation per se. The investigations now have to go on. The question is whether a fair investigation can go on with both of those people being in the agency and being investigated by the same agency. I would much rather, purely from a management perspective, think that it would be right that at least Mr. Asthana be asked to step away, let the investigation go on, and as far as his charges against the director are concerned, give him whatever assurances that you can to ensure that anybody who he perceives as being specifically biased against him does not investigate, but there has to be a fair and complete investigation to put public doubt at rest.
Yes.
The CBI is also not unlike Caesar's wife. It must be above suspicion.
Arima Sundaram, last word to Arima Sundaram.
Which one do we go to next?
Yes.
Do we go to the NIA?
How could we possibly achieve a completely independent investigation if the CBI is investigating itself?
You see, unfortunately today we have to accept the fact that the CBI is an authority in itself, is a statutory authority, is an authority which is not under the supervision, so to speak, of anyone else. So the investigation has to be carried out by the premier body. It is just to be believed and to be hoped that that investigation by whoever is the officer charged with it will do so independently. I think we can only take an analogy from the FBI in the United States. When there is a special officer appointed in the FBI to investigate something, whosoever it may be against, whether it's against the officers of the FBI themselves or against the president or anybody else, he is somebody who has special powers who cannot be interfered with at all and is allowed to do so. I'm only worried that finally this is once again going to fall back in the laps of the court, and the court is going to be asked, please monitor the whole thing because nobody believes anyone. And that is the very sad fact that we face now. The one premier institution we should all so believe in, here everybody is doubting it, and I keep saying somewhere or the other the buck has to stop. I only hope we'll find a place for it, but if you ask me a specific question, who has to investigate, it is the CBI. But CBI through a designated officer, that special officer, whoever is appointed to investigate, I share the hope of Sanjay that he will be a person who's completely impartial, unbiased, and honest. That is what we're looking at today.
All right. We also know that Rakesh Asthana at about 6:44 this evening moved the Delhi High Court for interim protection against arrest. This is where we're going to have to leave it. Unfortunately, the CBI number 1 and the CBI number 2 don't get along. We have some very, very serious allegations they have placed against each other. But where we're going to leave it tonight is that the CBI number 2 has an FIR filed against him for a serious case of bribery. And he's going to be investigated by his fellow officers in the CBI. This does leave a massive gaping dent and a hole in the reputation of the CBI as far as the average citizen is concerned. We're reading this in our morning papers. How are we going to repair the reputation of the CBI till it continues or carries on to be the premier investigative agency in our country? Someone is going to have to fix that immediately. In the meantime, one of our viewers raised an important question we did not receive an answer to in this 1 hour. Where is the Lokpal? And like rightly pointed out by one of our panelists, it deserves a conversation of its own. We will continue to raise the questions that are important to the citizens of this country. Thanks for watching.